It all began on a quiet, sun-drenched morning in a small Midwest town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, your story, and sometimes even your secrets, until one day, someone vanishes and those same secrets start whispering from the shadows. Her name was Emily Grace Walker, 17 years old, star student, quiet, kind, a little mysterious, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until she left a single handwritten note on her bedroom mirror, locked her bedroom door from the inside, and disappeared without a trace. No signs of a struggle. No forced entry. No goodbye. Just a sentence, 7 words, that would baffle detectives, torment her family, and ignite conspiracy theories for decades. The truth is hidden in plain sight. Now, here's where you come in, because what if I told you that note wasn't just teenage poetry but a warning? And that nearly 30 years later, something buried in a dusty museum exhibit, something overlooked for decades, might finally reveal what really happened to Emily? You've clicked on this video for a reason. You're chasing that same answer everyone else has been chasing for years. And I promise you, before the story ends, you'll get the answer. But the truth? It's not what you think. In fact, it's darker than anyone ever imagined. Now lean in seriously. This isn't just another unsolved mystery video. This is a layered, psychological journey that'll pull you in deeper with every twist. Because this isn't just Emily's story. It's about obsession, about the haunting power of memory, about how far someone will go to keep a secret buried. And right now, you're part of it. You're not just watching, you're investigating. You're going to piece this together with me. And by the end, you'll realize the answer's been right in front of us the entire time. You see, this case is one of those rare, eerie tales that grips the internet every few years. Reddit forums explode. TikTok sleuths try to decrypt old diary entries. YouTube channels dig through footage frame by frame. Hashtags like hashtag Emily Grace Mystery, hashtag Cryptic Note Disappearance, and hashtag Vanished in Plain Sight keep trending because everyone wants to be the one who cracks it. But there's one piece of the puzzle no one has ever seen before. One thread nobody's pulled until now. And it started in a place no one would expect, a traveling museum exhibit that made a quiet stop in a sleepy Oregon town. So let me bring you there. Imagine a room filled with antique oddities, handwritten letters from forgotten eras, dusty typewriters, vintage cameras, and in the corner, an unassuming art display donated by a private collector. At first glance, nothing about it screams relevance. Just a series of Polaroids framed on a faded corkboard. But one museum staffer, an intern named Kayla, notices something unusual. One of the photographs, dated weeks before Emily vanished, shows a teenage girl with piercing green eyes, standing near a rusted iron gate. She's smiling, but behind her is a wall filled with cryptic symbols. And when Kayla compares it to Emily's missing person poster, her heart skips a beat. The resemblance is chilling. And then she reads the label beneath the photo, Untitled, from the collection of D. Grace. That's when things start to unravel. Because D. Grace wasn't a known collector. No paper trail, no contact info, nothing. Just a name, a donation log, and a strange request that the photo never be sold, only displayed. When Kayla posts the photo online, the internet explodes. Emily's old classmates begin commenting. That's her. That's the necklace she always wore. Wait, why is that gate familiar? Suddenly, a long-dead mystery roars back to life. Except now, it's not just a mystery. It's a trail of clues that someone, somewhere, clearly didn't want found. And as we dig deeper, you'll see just how much was hidden in plain sight. Now, let's rewind a bit. The morning Emily vanished, her mother, Carol, thought it was just a typical school day. The alarm clock buzzed, coffee brewed downstairs, and Emily's room was quiet, door shut. She figured her daughter was just getting ready, like usual. But as hours passed and there was no movement, something felt off. She knocked. No answer. Then again, louder. Still silence. A mother's instinct kicked in. She called her husband, who came home from work and forced the door open. What they found chilled them to the bone. Emily's bed was made. Her phone was gone. Her journal, pages ripped out. And on the mirror, in thick black ink, the note: "The truth is hidden in plain sight." Police arrived. Detectives combed the house, the backyard, nearby woods. Nothing. No prints. No fibers. No witnesses. Surveillance footage from nearby intersections? Blank. Her digital footprint? Erased. It was like she walked off the face of the earth. But that phrase, hidden in plain sight, it stuck. Not just with her parents, but with investigators, journalists, internet forums. It became a rallying cry, a clue everyone thought they could solve. Was it metaphorical? Literal? Was she in danger or running from something? Some believed she was abducted. Others thought she planned it, leaving a breadcrumb trail of cryptic clues. There were even rumors she joined a cult. One theory even suggested she was still alive, just under a new identity. But every lead ended in frustration. That is, until the museum photo. What makes this story so chilling is how ordinary Emily's life seemed. She wasn't the type to run away. Straight A's. Volunteered at the local library. Soft-spoken. But her childhood friend, Jordan, remembers something else. In a podcast interview years later, he confessed Emily used to talk about invisible watchers. That she believed someone was following her. That she'd see strange cars outside her house late at night, and that she once found a cassette tape in her locker. No label, just static and whispers. Everyone dismissed it. Teen imagination. But now, people are listening. And more disturbing than the note is what investigators didn't release to the public. Here's where the story tightens its grip. Months after her disappearance, police found something buried under a loose floorboard in Emily's room. A shoebox filled with drawings. Dozens of them. Each one showing the same iron gate. The same cryptic symbols. And always a shadowy figure in the background. Face smudged out. But for some reason, those drawings were never made public until now. Because the museum photo? It matches the drawings exactly. Same gate. Same wall. Same symbols. Almost like Emily knew where she'd end up. Almost like she left a map. Let that sink in. This is not just a missing person case anymore. This is a breadcrumb trail from the past, one that might have been deliberately buried. And you're about to walk that path. We're going to unravel Emily's final days, the people she feared, and the secrets she may have uncovered. But as we dig deeper, we'll also find something else. A hidden pattern, stretching across decades, connecting Emily to other unexplained disappearances, all linked by a single symbol. A symbol that keeps showing up, in letters, in murals, even in police files, but has never been identified. Until now. So, here's my challenge to you. Stay with me. Don't skip. Don't pause. Every piece of this story connects. Every detail matters. I'm not just telling you what happened. I'm showing you the evidence. Together, we're going to trace every breadcrumb, hear from the people closest to the case, and follow the newest lead that could crack this wide open. And I'll warn you now, the ending? It's not the kind of closure you're expecting. It's bigger. It's bolder. And it's going to change how you look at this case, and maybe even how you look at the world. Because just when you think you've figured out what happened to Emily Grace Walker, just when the pieces finally seem to fit, something else will come to light. Something hidden, yes, but in plain sight all along. And that something? Well, you'll see. As the years passed, Emily's disappearance became more than just a local mystery. It became a haunting puzzle that the entire town tried to piece together. To those who knew her best, it didn't make sense. Emily Grace Walker wasn't the type of girl who would disappear. She had dreams, plans, a bright future ahead of her. She had just finished her junior year of high school, earning a reputation as a top student and a compassionate friend. She had a small, tight-knit circle, friends who shared her love of reading, quiet walks in the woods, and midnight talks about conspiracy theories and the unexplained. Emily had always been drawn to the strange and the mysterious, but her interests were more about wonder than fear. Or so it seemed. To her friends, the days leading up to her disappearance were like any other. Emily had been on a typical summer routine, attending the local library's book club, helping her mom around the house, and spending weekends at the community pool. But there had been something subtly different in the weeks leading up to that fateful day. Her friends remembered her growing more withdrawn. She would cancel plans at the last minute. She became obsessed with her journal, scribbling in it for hours on end, her pen never stopping. She had started wearing a silver necklace, an old family heirloom that her mother never saw her wear before. Jordan, her childhood friend, noticed it first. He asked about it one day when they were walking to school together, but she just smiled and said it was something important. He thought little of it at the time. Emily had always been a little secretive. But when he tried to talk to her about it again, just a week before she vanished, Emily got noticeably agitated and cut the conversation short. Then there was the phone call. It came late one evening, a week before Emily disappeared. Her mom, Carol, was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when the landline rang. Carol answered, but all she heard was heavy breathing on the other end. It lasted only a few seconds before the line went dead. When Carol tried to call back, the number was unlisted, the call completely untraceable. She didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was one of the strange local teens who liked to mess with the town's residents. But looking back now, Carol wonders if that call was a warning. A sign that someone had been watching Emily long before she disappeared. Emily's relationships were simple on the surface. She had a few close friends, mostly from school, a couple of neighborhood kids she'd grown up with, but there was one person who stood out in her life more than anyone else: Sean Porter. They weren't officially dating, but everyone in town knew Emily and Sean had been inseparable that summer. They spent nearly every day together, riding bikes to the old park, grabbing ice cream at the local diner, and talking about everything and nothing. Sean was a year older than Emily, quiet but charismatic in his own way. He had a reputation for being a little rebellious, but he always treated Emily with a kind of gentle care that no one could deny. His mother ran the local grocery store, and everyone in town knew the Porter family. Still, as close as they were, Sean seemed to distance himself from the investigation after Emily's disappearance. He didn't speak to reporters. He barely talked to his own friends about it. It was almost as if he had retreated into himself, withdrawing from everyone, as if he had become a different person overnight. Now, many years later, people still talk about Sean. Some say he knows more than he's ever let on. Others believe he's guilty, that maybe he was the one who had something to hide. The whispers started almost immediately after Emily vanished, fueled by his behavior. He'd been the last person to see her before she disappeared. Some even speculated they had fought that night, but no one really knew for sure. It wasn't until months later that Sean made an appearance on the podcast that had been following Emily's case. He looked older, more haggard, like the weight of his silence had aged him. He barely spoke during the interview, his answers short, almost clipped. When asked if he believed Emily had been in danger, he simply replied, "She was always in danger. From herself." It was a strange, cryptic response that didn't seem to fit the image of the caring boyfriend everyone had known. And when the interview ended, that was it. Sean disappeared from the public eye entirely. Not a single word from him since. And that's when people started to wonder, had he been involved in Emily's disappearance? Did he know where she went? Was he covering up something? But the more you peel back the layers, the more the situation becomes murky. Because while Sean might be an obvious suspect, there were others who had their own motives. For instance, Emily's teacher, Mrs. Goldstein, had always been particularly fond of her. Some of the other students thought it was strange how often Mrs. Goldstein would call Emily into her office for special projects and after-school study sessions. But was it something innocent, like a teacher taking an interest in her brightest student, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? After Emily disappeared, some classmates came forward, saying that they had overheard conversations between Mrs. Goldstein and Emily in the hallways, conversations that seemed, at the time, innocent enough, but now took on a more sinister tone. Some said the teacher had been pressuring Emily to get involved in her secretive research into local history. Others claimed they saw the teacher crying at Emily's memorial, but there was something unsettling in the way she behaved, like a person trying to hide their grief, but not succeeding. The rumors were never fully confirmed, but they lingered in the back of people's minds. Could Emily's teacher have known more than she let on? Could she have played a role in Emily's strange disappearance? And then there were the strange phone calls that came in the middle of the night, just days before Emily left. They came from a number no one could trace, a series of messages left on her voicemail, just a few words at a time. It's happening. You need to be ready. Don't trust anyone. The voice was low, distorted, and impossible to identify. Emily never spoke of these calls to anyone, but Jordan later admitted that he noticed Emily's behavior change right after they started. It was as if the phone calls had cast a shadow over her every move, a quiet paranoia that crept into her interactions. Who was behind these calls? And why had they reached out to Emily in particular? As the investigation moved forward, it seemed that every lead ended in frustration. No one could figure out where Emily had gone or why she'd left. No clues were left behind, no footprints, no digital traces. But what about the museum exhibit? The one that had been quietly collecting dust in a corner of a small, out-of-the-way museum in Oregon? The exhibit contained a strange collection of photographs, items, and artifacts that seemed connected to local legends and unsolved mysteries. No one had ever noticed it before, but when Kayla discovered the photo of Emily, one that matched her drawings exactly, it became clear that this was not some random coincidence. The photo was dated just weeks before Emily disappeared. It had been hanging on the wall of the museum for years, practically ignored, but the discovery changed everything. Who placed that photo there? Who knew about Emily's cryptic drawings? Was there someone who knew her intimately, who had left a message hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to connect the dots? Was the key to Emily's disappearance locked inside that photograph, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it? The more you look, the more it becomes apparent that this isn't just a story of one girl disappearing. This is a tangled web of people, secrets, and mysteries that have been waiting to be unraveled. And with every answer, another question emerges, one that's darker, more unsettling than the last. You're right in the thick of it now. Keep watching. Keep listening. Because the truth? It's closer than you think. And as you'll soon find out, some secrets are never meant to be found. As Kayla delved deeper into the mystery, she felt herself drawn further into a web of uncertainty. It wasn't just the unsettling questions surrounding Emily's disappearance that kept her awake at night. It was the strange, unexplained roadblocks she kept encountering. The closer she got to the truth, the more it seemed like something or someone was determined to stop her. It started subtly at first, little things she brushed off as coincidence. A file she'd left open on her computer disappeared overnight. The handwritten notes she'd made about Emily's case seemed to be tampered with, as if someone had been reading them. At first, Kayla thought she was just paranoid, caught up in the pressure of trying to solve a mystery that had eluded everyone for decades. But then things began to escalate in a way she couldn't ignore. One night, as she sat in the dimly lit corner of her living room, poring over old police reports and town records, she received a cryptic text message. The message was brief but chilling. Stop digging. You don't know what you're messing with. No name, no context, just a warning. Kayla stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea who it was from, but the message felt too direct to be a random threat. Who knew she was even looking into Emily's case? Who had found out she was piecing together clues that no one had ever dared to revisit? Her first instinct was to ignore it, to keep going, but the tension in her gut told her something was off. Whoever had sent that message wasn't just trying to intimidate her, they were trying to protect something. But what? As if on cue, another obstacle appeared. Kayla's research had led her to a small, out-of-the-way storage unit where she knew some of the original police evidence had been stored. She had obtained permission to access the files, but when she arrived at the location the next morning, the door was wide open. The lock had been cut, and the documents she needed, key pieces of evidence that could have unlocked Emily's whereabouts, were gone. Not misplaced, not accidentally thrown away, but deliberately removed. It didn't make sense. The unit was supposed to be sealed, monitored, and guarded. Yet now it was empty. Kayla's heart sank as she realized that someone had not only gotten to the evidence before her, but had gone to great lengths to make sure she couldn't follow the trail any further. The mystery was no longer just about Emily. It was about someone or something with the power to cover up the truth. But who had the resources to remove evidence so efficiently?
And why?
These questions gnawed at Kayla, but it wasn't until a conversation with someone she thought she could trust that the situation truly began to unravel. It was late one evening when she met up with Jordan at the local diner. Jordan had been a vital ally in her search for answers. He had grown up with Emily, and though he hadn't been in touch with her for years, he was still haunted by the disappearance. When Kayla shared what had happened with the storage unit, his expression darkened. He looked over his shoulder nervously before speaking in a hushed tone. "You need to be careful, Kayla. There's more to this than you know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Kayla raised an eyebrow, confused. "What do you mean? You think someone's trying to stop me?" Jordan hesitated, then looked down at the table, as if he were weighing whether to say what he'd been keeping to himself for years. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't want to say anything before, because I didn't know if you'd believe me. But there was something weird that happened around the time Emily disappeared. Something that I never told anyone, not even the cops." He paused again, his eyes flickering with a mix of fear and regret. "It's about Sean. He was involved in something dangerous. Something he didn't want anyone to know about. And after Emily disappeared, he completely shut down, stopped talking to me. But before that, there were signs. I didn't want to admit it, but now I think I have to." Kayla felt the blood drain from her face. She had trusted Jordan completely, but the way he was acting now felt off. The way he avoided her gaze, the way his hands trembled slightly as he spoke, it made her wonder if he was hiding something too. Could it be that Jordan wasn't just an innocent bystander in all of this? Was there something in his past, something he knew about Sean or about Emily, that he hadn't been honest about? Jordan's voice dropped to a near whisper. "You should stay away from Sean. He's dangerous now, Kayla. And whatever happened that summer, whatever Emily got mixed up in, he's the key. But not in the way you think." Kayla's mind raced as she absorbed his words. What had Sean been involved in? And why hadn't Jordan told her about this before? Had he been protecting Sean? Or had he been protecting himself? And if Sean was involved in something dark, why hadn't anyone else noticed it? Kayla had seen Sean at the memorial, his face drained of emotion, his eyes hollow. But was it grief or guilt? As if the tension weren't enough, Kayla's phone buzzed again. A second anonymous text flashed across the screen. "You're going down a dangerous path. This isn't just about Emily anymore. Get out before it's too late." This was no longer just a search for a missing girl. Kayla was up against something far bigger, something with a network of people who would go to great lengths to protect their secrets. She felt trapped, the walls closing in around her, unsure of whom she could trust. Was Jordan truly trying to help, or was he hiding his own role in what happened to Emily? Was he somehow connected to Sean's secret past? Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but she picked up anyway. The voice on the other end was low and menacing, sending a chill down her spine. "Stop looking. You're too close, Kayla. One more step and you'll regret it." The line went dead. Kayla's heart hammered in her chest. There was no turning back now. The stakes had just been raised, and the closer she got to uncovering the truth, the more dangerous it became. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop, not until they buried the past once and for all. The truth was closer than ever. But at what cost? As Kayla stared at her phone, the last words from the mysterious caller echoed in her mind. Every inch of her body was tense, her pulse quickening as her thoughts raced. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and now she was on a path that might not only unravel everything she had come to believe about Emily's disappearance, but also threaten her own safety. But just as she was beginning to formulate a plan, another shockwave hit, one that made her realize the depth of the web she was entangled in. The very people she thought she could rely on, the ones closest to her, were now caught in this twisted puzzle as well. It wasn't just her anymore. The stakes had been raised, and the game was becoming even more dangerous. Kayla had spent the past few days barely sleeping, holed up in her apartment sifting through old photos and records, trying to make sense of the scattered pieces of evidence. She had revisited the footage from the museum exhibit, the one that had reignited her search for Emily, but something about it still gnawed at her. Something felt off. It wasn't just the discovery of the new theory about Emily's disappearance. It was the reactions of the people around her, people who seemed to know more than they were letting on. That evening, she had a phone call from her best friend, Sarah, who had been supportive throughout the entire investigation. But when Sarah picked up, Kayla immediately sensed something wrong. Her voice sounded strained, as if she were trying to mask the worry in her tone. "Kayla, we need to talk." "You're not going to like this," Sarah said, her voice low. "What's going on?" Kayla's stomach dropped. She had never heard Sarah like this before. "I got a text," Sarah continued, her words rushed. "It's the same kind of thing you've been getting. Someone warning me to back off, to stay away from you. They said you're going to get yourself hurt if you keep digging. And then they mentioned you specifically. They said they knew everything you were planning to do next." "How could they know that, Kayla? What's going on? Who's doing this to us?" Kayla's heart pounded in her chest. For a moment, all she could do was stare at her phone, as if the truth would reveal itself in the way Sarah was speaking. A feeling of dread swept over her. This wasn't just a warning. This was personal. And it wasn't just about Emily anymore. Whoever was behind this had reached out to Sarah, someone who had never even been involved in the investigation. They were watching both of them now, and Kayla realized that the walls were closing in faster than she could handle. Her mind raced, thinking of every possible explanation. Who could be this connected to her? Who had this much control over her life? The fear creeping up her spine was almost suffocating, but as much as she wanted to give up, she couldn't. Not now. There were too many questions left unanswered. And it wasn't just Sarah who had received the threat. Kayla knew that someone else was trying to control the narrative. Someone who didn't want Emily's story to be told.
But why?
What was so important about hiding the truth, and who stood to gain from it? The phone call ended abruptly as Sarah promised to keep her head down and be more cautious. But even after hanging up, Kayla felt the unsettling weight of the situation settle into her bones. This wasn't just a cold case. This was a puzzle with too many moving pieces, and now those pieces were starting to fit together in ways she hadn't expected. She needed to move fast, but there was no telling who she could trust anymore. The next day, as if fate were taunting her, Kayla received a new lead. A small, old letter was slipped under her door. It was a single sheet of yellowed paper, crumpled at the edges. The handwriting was messy, hurried, and when she unfolded it, her eyes widened in disbelief. The letter didn't contain a warning or an empty threat like the ones she had received before. Instead, it was a confession.
A name.
One that stopped Kayla dead in her tracks. "I know what happened to Emily. I couldn't stop it, but I can tell you where to find the answers.
Meet me tonight.
Don't bring anyone else." The letter was signed with a name she hadn't heard in years. Tommy Davis. Her hands trembled as she held the letter, her mind racing. Tommy Davis. He had been Emily's best friend, the one person no one suspected. They had grown up together, shared everything, but after Emily's disappearance, Tommy had completely vanished. No one had heard from him, and there were rumors that he had moved away, started a new life. Some even whispered that he had been involved in Emily's disappearance, but the police had never found any concrete evidence. The fact that Tommy was reaching out now, after all this time, was both terrifying and intriguing. But it was the timing that made Kayla hesitate. She had just received a warning. Someone had told her to stop, to stay away from this. And now Tommy, a name tied to the case from the very beginning, was reappearing out of nowhere. Was this a genuine attempt to help her? Or was it yet another trap? Was Tommy being used by someone else? Was he still hiding something? Kayla had no idea, but she knew one thing. Meeting him could change everything. With a sinking feeling in her stomach, she prepared to meet him. But as she left her apartment, her phone buzzed once again. It was another anonymous message. This time it was short but chilling. "Don't trust Tommy." The plot was thickening faster than she could follow, and Kayla could feel herself being pulled deeper into the darkness. Everyone seemed to have their own secret, their own agenda, and Kayla was caught in the middle of it all. She was about to step into a meeting with a man who might hold the key to everything, and who might also be the final piece in a puzzle she wasn't ready to solve. As she made her way to the meeting spot, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking straight into danger. The closer she got to the truth, the more she realized. This was far bigger than Emily. This was a mystery that threatened to consume everything and everyone it touched. Kayla's heart pounded as she walked through the darkening streets, her every step feeling heavier with each passing moment. The air had grown cold, the kind of chill that sinks into your bones and makes you feel like someone or something was watching. She glanced over her shoulder, the familiar tension creeping up her neck. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. At first, she had convinced herself it was just the nerves of meeting Tommy after all this time, but as she walked deeper into the alley where they were supposed to meet, she felt a surge of dread that pushed her forward against her better judgment. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting to see a message from Sarah, maybe some reassurance or advice, but instead, it was another anonymous text. Her stomach dropped as she read it. "Turn back now. They're watching you. You don't know what you're walking into." The words blurred for a moment as she stared at them, her breath catching in her throat. Who was watching her? Who was behind all this? As her mind raced, she heard footsteps behind her, light but unmistakable, just loud enough to make her panic. She turned quickly, but there was no one in sight. Only the eerie silence of the empty street. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. The sound had been too close. She wasn't imagining this. Her steps quickened, but she was certain that whoever, or whatever, was following her wasn't far behind. A car passed by, its headlights briefly illuminating the alley ahead of her. For that brief moment, she thought she saw a figure standing near the end of the alley, just standing still, watching her. Kayla's breath hitched, and she forced herself to keep moving, her legs almost unwilling to carry her forward. Her mind raced, each thought more fragmented than the last. She couldn't think straight anymore. Was this Tommy's doing? Had he somehow orchestrated everything, luring her into this trap? Or was there something much bigger going on? The closer she got to the meeting point, the more the sense of unease settled into her stomach. She hadn't seen Tommy in years, but the message he'd left her felt like the first genuine lead she had gotten in days. And yet, the closer she got, the more the feeling that she was being toyed with gripped her. Was he still the person she had known? Or was he now something else entirely, someone whose hands were tied to things far darker than she could have imagined? Just as she rounded the corner, ready to face whatever, or whoever, was waiting for her, she received another text. Her heart stopped for a beat. This one was different. This one wasn't just a warning. It was personal. If you don't stop now, Sarah will be the next to pay. Her blood ran cold.
Sarah.
Her best friend. The one person she had trusted through everything, the one person who had supported her when no one else had. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This was no longer just about Emily. This was about her. This was a game, and now Sarah was a pawn. Without thinking, Kayla whipped out her phone, dialing Sarah's number with shaking hands. It rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. A feeling of panic gripped her chest. She couldn't wait for Sarah to pick up. If the text was true, if someone really was targeting her, it would be too late by then. In a rush of panic, Kayla shoved the phone back into her pocket and looked up to see the alleyway ahead of her stretching into darkness. A figure was now visible at the far end, standing in the shadows. They didn't move, didn't acknowledge her presence. It was as if they were waiting for her, deliberately holding back, almost as though they were letting her approach. The instinct to run hit her hard, but she forced herself to keep walking. Her breath was quick, shallow, and every step felt like an effort. The closer she got to the figure, the more her mind fought to stay focused. It couldn't be Tommy, could it? No, the figure was too tall, too still. And the way they stood, it felt wrong. She didn't recognize their silhouette, and there was a coldness in the air that made her skin crawl. When she was about 10 feet away, the figure finally moved. Slowly, deliberately, they turned toward her, and for a split second, Kayla felt like her world was closing in. There was no escape, no way out. She had walked into this trap, and she hadn't even seen it coming. Before she could react, a voice, low and distorted, came from the figure's mouth. You should have listened, it said, its tone unnerving. This is bigger than you, Kayla. And now it's too late. The figure stepped back into the shadows, and without another word, they disappeared. Kayla stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest, her mind spinning. What the hell was happening?
Who were they?
And what did they mean by too late? For a moment, she stood there, immobilized by the growing sense of dread in the pit of her stomach. The whole world felt off-kilter, like everything she had known was unraveling around her. She looked around again, scanning for any sign of movement, but the alley was empty. The air felt heavier, and she couldn't help but wonder. Had someone been watching her the whole time? Her phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was another text, but this one wasn't from the anonymous number. This time it was from Sarah. I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. They're not who you think they are. Kayla's blood ran cold as she stared at the message, trying to process it. Sarah's words didn't make sense. They're not who you think they are? Who wasn't who she thought they were? Was Sarah trying to warn her? Or had she been caught up in something too? Something even deeper and more dangerous than Kayla could have imagined? Kayla didn't have time to think. She had to find Sarah, now. But as she started to run toward the street, her phone buzzed once again. This time, the text was chilling in its simplicity. It's too late. You've seen too much. The sense of impending danger hit her like a wave, and for the first time, Kayla realized that she wasn't just solving a mystery anymore. She was fighting for her life. The world she thought she understood was gone, and she had no idea who was on her side, who was against her, or what was waiting for her next. The darkness had come for her, and there was no telling how far it would go to make sure she didn't uncover the truth. Kayla barely had time to catch her breath before her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unexpected source, her brother, Tommy. She had been so focused on the creeping dread, the mysterious figure in the alley, and Sarah's cryptic message that she hadn't stopped to consider that Tommy could be involved in all of this. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the phone, her mind already running through 1,000 scenarios. What could Tommy have to say? Had he been the one to send all those anonymous texts? Was he warning her? Or was he part of the plot to keep her in the dark? But when she opened the message, everything changed. Kayla, it's me. You've got to trust me. Don't go to the police. The truth will come out soon enough, but you're not ready for it. The person you think you can trust, she's not who you think. Her heart skipped a beat.
What did he mean by that?
What was happening?
Who was he talking about?
She stared at the message, her mind spinning. The person you think you can trust. Sarah? Had she been involved all along? Had her best friend been hiding something from her, something more sinister than she could have ever imagined? Before she could digest the full weight of the message, her phone buzzed again, but this time it was an unknown number, one she hadn't seen before. She hesitated, but something compelled her to answer. Kayla, the voice on the other end said, low and gravelly, sending a shiver down her spine. I know you've been digging into things. I know what you're looking for. But you don't want to know the truth. Believe me, you don't. You're in too deep now, and there's no turning back. Kayla's stomach twisted in knots. Was this the person who had been following her? Who had been sending her the mysterious messages? She could feel the walls closing in on her, the weight of the situation threatening to suffocate her. She had no idea who this person was, but she knew she was running out of time. She needed answers, but the more she tried to get closer to the truth, the more she felt like it was slipping further out of her reach. Who are you? She demanded, her voice shaking despite her efforts to sound confident. What do you want from me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, as if the person was considering her question. Then, the voice spoke again, colder this time. I'm someone you should have stayed far away from, Kayla. But since you're so determined to find out what happened to Emily, I guess it's time to tell you something you're not going to believe. Kayla's pulse raced as she gripped her phone tighter. She was on the edge, teetering between fear and disbelief. What could this person possibly reveal that would make her question everything she had believed? Do you remember the last time you saw Sarah? The voice asked. Think back carefully. It's important. Kayla's mind raced back to that fateful day, the day everything had changed. She remembered meeting Sarah at the diner, talking about the past, laughing about old memories. But now, with every detail coming back to her, it didn't feel like the innocent conversation it once had been. She hadn't noticed it then, but in hindsight, something about Sarah's behavior had been off. Her nervousness, her reluctance to talk about certain things. Kayla had dismissed it at the time, thinking it was just her friend being overprotective, but now, it felt like a red flag. "You're telling me Sarah has been hiding something from me all along?" Kayla whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. The person on the other end of the line didn't respond right away, but Kayla could hear faint rustling, as if they were moving around. When they spoke again, their voice was filled with cold certainty. "You think she's your friend. You think she's been helping you. But you're wrong, Kayla. She's been a part of this from the beginning." The line went silent for a moment as Kayla processed the information. Her mind struggled to make sense of it. Could Sarah really be involved? It didn't make sense. She had always been there for her, always had her back. But what if everything was a lie? What if Sarah wasn't who she said she was? Before Kayla could ask another question, the voice on the other end continued, dropping a bombshell that sent a chill through her bones. "You want to know the truth about Emily? Then you'll have to confront Sarah. Because she's the one who knows everything. And when you do, you'll find out just how deep this goes." The words hit Kayla like a freight train. She could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. For weeks, she had been chasing down clues, trying to piece together the mystery of Emily's disappearance. But now, everything she thought she knew was being turned upside down. She wasn't just digging into a missing persons case. She was digging into something much darker, something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The voice hung up abruptly, leaving Kayla standing in the middle of the street, her heart racing and her thoughts swirling. She needed answers, but every step she took seemed to only lead her deeper into a web of lies and deception. What if she couldn't trust anyone? What if everyone around her had been lying, using her to cover up something they didn't want her to uncover? As she stood there, lost in the weight of the situation, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message from Sarah. Kayla's hands shook as she pressed play, her mind racing with anticipation and dread. The video opened with Sarah's face, but her expression was not one Kayla had ever seen before. Gone was the reassuring smile, the kind eyes. Instead, there was a look of fear, mixed with something else, something darker. "Kayla, I don't have much time," Sarah's voice crackled through the phone. "They're watching me too. I've made a huge mistake. I never should have gotten involved with them. But it's too late now."
I'm sorry.
"I tried to protect you, but you have to understand, I never wanted you to get pulled into this. The people behind this, they're dangerous. And they'll do anything to keep their secrets hidden." Kayla's breath caught in her throat as she watched the video. Was Sarah trying to warn her? Or was this another lie? Had Sarah been playing her all along? And then, in the final moments of the video, Sarah whispered something that made Kayla's blood run cold. "Emily's not missing, Kayla. She's been right in front of you this whole time." The screen went black. Kayla's heart hammered in her chest as she stood frozen in place, the words echoing in her mind. "Emily's not missing. She's been right in front of you this whole time." Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in around her. The mystery she had spent so long chasing, the people she thought she could trust, the very foundation of everything she had believed, it was all falling apart. And in that moment, Kayla knew one thing for sure. The truth was far more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. Kayla stood in the dimly lit kitchen, staring at her phone, still processing the video from Sarah. "Emily's not missing. She's been right in front of you this whole time." The words burned into her mind, her heart pounding as if it might break free from her chest. She had spent weeks, months even, obsessing over Emily's disappearance, convinced that every clue she uncovered was leading her closer to the truth. But now, the truth was slipping through her fingers, like sand in the wind, unpredictable and elusive. Was Sarah warning her? Or was she part of the conspiracy, playing a deeper game than Kayla could even begin to understand? The video had left more questions than answers, and the phone in her hand now felt like a weight she couldn't carry. As if the universe had heard her thoughts, her phone buzzed again, and her heart jumped into her throat. She didn't have to check the screen to know who it was.
Tommy.
Her brother had been eerily silent for the last few days, and now he was contacting her again, like a shadow from the past that refused to stay buried. With trembling hands, she opened the message. Kayla, I don't know how much longer I can keep this quiet. You're in too deep, and you need to stop. I don't care what you think, you need to trust me on this. You can't keep going after Sarah. They're already watching you. If you don't stop now, you'll regret it. Kayla's breath caught in her throat, her head spinning. What did Tommy know? Why was he suddenly so insistent on stopping her? Had he known all along, and now he was finally trying to pull her back from the edge? The anger swelled within her, mixing with confusion and fear. For the first time in this entire investigation, she felt like she was truly alone. Everyone she had trusted seemed to be hiding something, pulling strings behind the scenes, manipulating her like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Tommy was supposed to be her protector, the one person she could always count on. But now, he was trying to stop her from uncovering the truth.
Why?
What was so dangerous about Sarah that Tommy was willing to risk their relationship to keep her from finding out? She paced back and forth, gripping the phone so tight her knuckles turned white. There was only one way to get to the bottom of this, one way to finally understand what was happening. She had to confront Sarah. But doing that meant stepping into a minefield. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Not Tommy. Not Sarah. Certainly not the mysterious voice on the phone. Each step she took only seemed to push her further into a tangled web, a place where there were no clear lines between friend and foe. Kayla closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her thoughts, but they wouldn't stop swirling around her. What if Sarah wasn't the one pulling the strings? What if she was just another victim, just like Emily? What if they were all being manipulated by someone more dangerous, someone with the power to destroy everything Kayla thought she knew? The phone buzzed again. Another message from Tommy. She hesitated before reading it, every part of her telling her to stop, to ignore it, to just go to Sarah and confront her. But curiosity overpowered caution. She opened the message. Listen to me, Kayla. I'm begging you. I can't protect you if you keep going down this path. I'm not sure what they've said to you, but you don't understand the bigger picture. If you keep asking questions, you're not just risking your life, you're risking ours. This is bigger than you think. You have no idea what they're capable of. Please just let it go. Kayla's mind was reeling. Her pulse quickened, and she suddenly felt as though she were suffocating in her own skin. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. This wasn't just about finding answers. This was about survival. Her survival. And the safety of those she loved. Could Tommy be right? Could this truly be more than she could handle? She thought about the way he had warned her. The urgency in his voice. He was afraid, and that fear was contagious. But then she thought about the video. Sarah had sent it to her for a reason. She had wanted to tell her something that could change everything. Kayla couldn't just walk away now. She couldn't. She shoved the phone into her pocket and grabbed her jacket, determination setting into her bones. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a fight for the truth. And she couldn't back down. Not now. As she stepped out into the night, the world felt different. Darker. Every shadow seemed to watch her every move. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her, just out of sight, waiting for her to make the wrong move. Kayla's breath hitched as she glanced over her shoulder. There was nothing there, just the empty street, the glow of the streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. But she couldn't shake the sensation. The sense that something terrible was about to happen, something that would make everything she had uncovered so far seem insignificant. And then, a figure stepped out from behind a nearby car. She froze. Her heart hammered in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. It was Sarah. But she wasn't alone. Another figure stood next to her, a tall man with a dark jacket, his face hidden in the shadows. You shouldn't have come, Kayla, Sarah said softly, her voice almost a whisper. I warned you. The words sent a cold chill down Kayla's spine, and for the first time, She realized just how dangerous the situation had become. It wasn't just the mystery of Emily's disappearance that was threatening her, it was the people who had been controlling it all along. The man beside Sarah took a step forward, and Kayla instinctively took a step back. Her heart raced, her pulse quickened. She was trapped. There was no way out. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice trembling, almost as if she were on the verge of tears. "I didn't want this to happen. But you left me no choice. You forced my hand." The words hung in the air like a terrible omen. Kayla's head spun as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Who was this man? Why was Sarah so afraid? And what had Tommy been trying to protect her from? "Make the right choice, Kayla," the man said, his voice low and menacing. "You don't want to find out what happens if you don't." The silence that followed was thick with tension, and in that moment, Kayla realized that the choice before her was more impossible than anything she had faced before. She could confront Sarah and risk everything, or she could walk away and let the truth stay buried forever. The weight of the decision hung heavy on her shoulders, and as she stood there, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, she knew that whatever choice she made would change the course of her life forever. And then, just as she was about to speak, a car sped down the street, the headlights blinding her momentarily. When the lights faded, the man and Sarah were gone. Just like that, they had disappeared into the night, leaving her standing in the street, alone, with nothing but questions. The silence was deafening. The mystery had deepened, and Kayla knew she was no closer to the truth than she had been before. But something inside her told her this was just the beginning. The streets were eerily quiet as Kayla stood alone in the fading glow of the streetlights. The shadowy figure of Sarah and the man who had been with her had vanished into the night, leaving behind only a sense of dread that clung to her skin like a thick fog. Every inch of her being screamed that something was wrong, that she had just stumbled onto something far bigger than she had ever imagined. But before she could even process what had just happened, her phone buzzed again, shattering the silence. It was a message from Tommy, and his words felt like a hammer to the gut. "They know, Kayla. It's too late. I'm so sorry, but you need to stop. I never wanted you to get caught up in this. I tried to warn you. Please listen to me now. This isn't just about Emily. They've been watching you for longer than you think." She froze. "They've been watching you." The words echoed in her mind, reverberating through her thoughts with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Her brother, the one person she had trusted more than anyone else, was caught in the same web of deception, manipulation, and betrayal that she had just walked into. But why hadn't he told her the truth sooner? Why hadn't he come clean when things started to get dangerous? A sinking feeling formed in the pit of her stomach, the realization dawning on her with suffocating clarity. Tommy wasn't just trying to protect her. He was part of it all. The conspiracy. The lies. Everything that had been happening to her wasn't just a series of unfortunate events. It had all been carefully orchestrated. And Tommy had known more than he let on. That stinging betrayal cut deeper than anything she had felt in a long time. As she clutched the phone in her trembling hands, the world around her seemed to close in, suffocating her. She had been trying so hard to uncover the truth about Emily, trying to piece together the puzzle of her disappearance, but the pieces were all wrong. Everything she thought she knew had been a lie. And now, with Tommy's message confirming her darkest fears, she realized just how much danger she was really in. Before she could process the gravity of the situation, a figure emerged from the shadows. Kayla's breath caught in her throat. It was a woman, and she wasn't alone. Behind her was another figure, this time a tall, broad-shouldered man with a cold, expressionless face. They were standing at the end of the street, watching her intently. She didn't recognize them, but their presence felt like a weight pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. "Kayla," the woman called softly, her voice dripping with an eerie calmness. "We need to talk." Kayla instinctively took a step back, her pulse racing. She had no idea who this person was or what they wanted, but she could feel the danger in every fiber of her being. The man behind her took a step forward, his posture rigid, like he was ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. I think we both know you're not going to leave here until you understand what's going on, the woman continued, her eyes glinting in the dim light. You've already uncovered more than you should have. You've been digging into something you have no business knowing. Her words hit Kayla like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, her mind raced with a million different questions.
Who were these people?
Why were they following her? And why was she suddenly the target of something much bigger than she ever imagined? I'm not afraid of you, Kayla replied, though her voice trembled despite her best effort to stay calm. She wasn't sure if it was the fear or the anger rising within her, but something in her had snapped. She wasn't going to let them intimidate her, not now, not after everything she'd already been through. The woman smirked. You should be. You have no idea what you're up against. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call, Tommy's number flashing on the screen. Without thinking, Kayla answered it, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and anger. Tommy, what's going on? Why are they after me? Why didn't you tell me any of this? But before he could respond, the woman stepped forward, grabbing the phone from her hand with a speed that took Kayla by surprise. She stared at it for a moment, then spoke into the receiver, her voice cold and commanding. He can't protect you anymore. Not when it's already too late. Kayla's heart dropped into her stomach as she realized what she was hearing. Tommy had been working with them the whole time. She had been played from the very beginning. Tell her, Tommy, the woman said, her eyes flicking to the phone in her hand. Tell her everything. There was a long pause on the line. Tommy's voice came through, strained and full of regret. Kayla, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to get involved in this, but it's too late. You're too deep. They've been following you for weeks. You've already made too many mistakes, and now they're coming for you. There's no turning back. The words hit her like a freight train. The trust she had placed in Tommy, her brother, the person she thought would always have her back, it was all a lie. He had been a part of this conspiracy from the start, leading her down a path she should never have walked. And now, with everything unraveling before her, Kayla had no idea who she could trust anymore. She felt more alone than she had ever felt in her life. The woman clicked the phone off and tossed it aside, her eyes locking with Kayla's. Now that you know the truth, you need to make a choice. Walk away and pretend you never knew any of this, or keep digging and risk everything. She smiled, but there was nothing warm or reassuring about it. But know this, Kayla, if you don't walk away now, you won't just be risking your life. You'll be risking everyone you care about. Kayla stood there, paralyzed by the weight of her decision. The conspiracy was bigger than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about Emily anymore, it was about everything. Everything she thought she knew, everything she had worked so hard to uncover, was a lie. The people she trusted were betraying her, and now, with no clear path ahead, Kayla was left to face an impossible choice: to walk away from the truth and live in the dark, or to risk it all to expose a conspiracy that had consumed her life and was now threatening to take everything from her. As the man stepped closer, blocking her exit, the reality of the situation hit her like a wave crashing over her. She had no way out. The air was thick with tension as Kayla stood face to face with the woman who had led her down this twisted path, her heart pounding in her chest. The darkness of the alley seemed to close in on her, every shadow stretching unnaturally as if the night itself were conspiring against her. The man who stood beside the woman, his arms crossed and his eyes unblinking, was a silent threat, a wall of muscle that made every step she took feel like a step deeper into danger. She knew there was no turning back now. This was it, the moment where all the pieces of the puzzle had to finally fall into place. She had no more time to waste on questions or second-guessing. Her mind raced, but it was the bitter truth that kept cutting through her panic. Tommy had betrayed her. He had known everything, yet he hadn't told her. The truth, the terrible truth, was right in front of her, lurking beneath layers of lies and manipulation. But as much as she wanted answers, she could feel the danger of pushing too hard. She had already uncovered things that were meant to stay hidden, things that could destroy people, important people, if they were ever exposed. And now, those people were coming for her. There was no escape. The woman's voice sliced through the stillness, sharp and commanding. You think you've figured it all out, don't you? That you're some hero, uncovering a conspiracy that's been decades in the making. She smirked, as if she had all the power in the world. You're not the first one to dig too deep, Kayla. And you won't be the last. Her eyes flicked to the man beside her, who remained impassive, a silent sentinel. Kayla's hands were trembling, but she forced her voice to stay steady. What do you want from me? Why are you doing this? Her eyes narrowed. And what does Emily have to do with all of this? Was she even real? Or was she just another pawn in your game? The woman's smile faded slightly, replaced by a coldness that made Kayla's skin crawl. Emily was never meant to be a pawn. She was a warning, a message to those who get too close. She stepped forward, her gaze piercing. You're asking the wrong questions. The real question is why you're still standing here, refusing to walk away. What's worth risking everything for, Kayla? What's worth all this pain? Kayla's thoughts began to spiral. She had never imagined that everyone she'd trusted, had been a part of something so much larger than she had ever expected. It wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a force, an unstoppable tide that had shaped the lives of everyone who had come too close to the truth. And now, she was standing at the epicenter, unable to turn away. You think you can stop it? The woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't. You're too late. This goes beyond you, beyond your family. There's nothing you can do to change it. You're already in too deep. Kayla's heart slammed against her ribs. Her mind was a blur of conflicting emotions, anger, betrayal, fear, but beneath it all, there was something else, a quiet, insistent truth. She had to know everything. She had to understand why Emily had disappeared, why she had been dragged into this world of secrecy and danger, even if it meant losing everything. Without warning, the woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn envelope. She tossed it at Kayla, the weight of it more than just paper. This is the last piece, she said, her tone almost sympathetic. The truth you've been chasing. Kayla snatched the envelope from the ground, her hands shaking as she tore it open. Inside was a faded photograph, one she recognized immediately. It was a picture of her family, her parents, her brother, and herself, all gathered around a smiling Emily, who was younger then, a part of their lives in a way Kayla had never fully understood. But it wasn't the photo that stopped her in her tracks. It was the writing on the back. You'll find me when you're ready to see the truth. But be careful. Not everyone is who they seem. The ones you trust will be the ones who betray you. The words hit her like a punch to the gut, the meaning of them sinking in with an icy finality. Not everyone is who they seem. The truth was right in front of her, and it had been there all along. Emily wasn't just some missing girl, a tragic story she had been chasing. Emily had been a part of this. She had known the truth, and she had been trying to warn her all along. Suddenly, the world seemed to shift. The air around her thickened, the sounds of the city fading into a haunting silence. She looked up, her eyes wide with realization. The woman was no longer standing in front of her, and the man had disappeared as well. Everything was wrong. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the broken shards of information that had been thrown at her. But one thing was clear. There was someone else pulling the strings, someone she hadn't even considered. Before she could react, the ground beneath her feet shifted. She looked down to see a small, hidden compartment in the floor, one that had been carefully concealed. Instinctively, she crouched down, pulling it open. Inside was a file, a thick, old manila folder, one that was labeled simply, Project Exodus. Her breath caught in her throat as she opened the file, the contents spilling out in a chaotic mess. There were documents, photographs, notes, all linked to her family, to Emily, and to people she had never heard of. But one paper, one note in particular, made her blood run cold. It was a detailed, handwritten letter, signed with a name that she thought she would never see again. It was Tommy's handwriting. Kayla, I've done something terrible. The truth is darker than you could ever imagine. They'll come for you, and they'll come for me too. I'm sorry, but I can't help you anymore. I can't protect you. Don't trust anyone, especially not me. This is bigger than both of us. The final blow landed, the truth of everything crashing down on her. Tommy, the one person she had trusted above all, had been a part of this from the beginning. He had been playing both sides, caught in the middle of something far darker and more dangerous than she could ever understand. And now, with this new information, she realized she was standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between the truth and destruction. She had been betrayed by everyone, by her family, by her closest ally, and now, with the conspiracy closing in, she had only one choice left: to confront the shadowy figures who had set this all in motion and end it once and for all. But as the room went dark and she heard the distant hum of approaching footsteps, one final thought pierced her mind. The people behind this, the ones who had been orchestrating everything, weren't just after her. They were after something much more valuable, something far beyond her understanding. And now, she was standing at the heart of the storm, with no way to escape. The story had only just begun. The final confrontation had come, and with it, a sense of finality that Kayla hadn't been prepared for. As she stood there in the dimly lit room, facing the people who had shaped the chaos that had taken over her life, she finally understood the full scope of what had been happening all these years. It wasn't just about Emily. It wasn't just about her family or the missing pieces of the puzzle that she had been desperately trying to put together. No, this was something much bigger, an operation that had been working in the shadows for decades, twisting the lives of everyone it touched. But even as the truth unraveled before her eyes, Kayla could feel something stirring deep within her, something that made her hesitate. The answer, the final piece, had always been right there in front of her, and now, as she pieced it together, it was too much to bear. The realization settled on her like a heavy weight, the truth crashing down in a way that left her breathless. There had been no simple answers to this mystery, no easy resolution. The conspirators, the people who had manipulated and controlled everything she thought she knew, had disappeared into the darkness. Some had already paid the price for their actions, while others had retreated, hidden away, beyond her reach. Kayla had finally uncovered everything she could about the people behind it all, but even now, it felt like a game of cat and mouse. The files, the photos, the cryptic letters, they didn't provide the final, reassuring answer she had been hoping for. Instead, they only served to raise more questions, more doubts, about the true extent of the conspiracy. Had Emily truly been a part of it, or was she just another casualty? Had Tommy been trying to protect her all along, or had he been too deeply enmeshed in the web of lies to ever break free? There were no more easy answers, no more simple truths. As the days passed and Kayla began to process everything she had learned, a strange sense of calm began to settle over her. She could feel the weight of the past beginning to lift, even as the scars remained. There was no turning back, no way to undo the damage that had been done, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she was starting to accept the truth, whatever it was. She had become the person who had dared to uncover the darkness, to pull back the veil and expose the secrets that had been buried for so long. It had cost her, yes, but it had also made her stronger, more resilient. Her mind drifted to the final letter Tommy had written to her, the one she had found hidden in the file. It still haunted her, but now, with some distance, she was starting to see the bigger picture. She wasn't just a pawn in a game. She had been the one who had tipped the scales, the one who had uncovered the cracks in the facade. And while the people behind the conspiracy may have thought they had won, they hadn't accounted for her ability to fight back, to push through the darkness, and emerge on the other side. But even as she stood on the precipice of her own victory, there was still one lingering thought that refused to leave her mind. The conspiracy was far from over. The shadowy figures who had orchestrated it all hadn't disappeared. They were still out there, watching, waiting for the next person to make the mistake of uncovering their secrets. Kayla had won her battle, but the war was far from over. One last twist remained, one last piece of the puzzle that had to be put into place. As Kayla walked away from the mess she had uncovered, there was a nagging feeling that something, or someone, was still out there, waiting for her. It was a thought that clung to her like a shadow, one that refused to let her rest. But maybe that was just the price of knowing too much, of daring to uncover the truth. The world didn't just let you walk away from its secrets. The last thing she saw before she left the room was the same photograph of her family, the one with Emily smiling, so innocent, so unaware of the storm that had been brewing. For the first time, Kayla understood the significance of that photo. Emily hadn't been just another victim, another casualty of the conspiracy. She had been the key, the spark that had started it all. And now, years later, it was up to Kayla to keep the flame alive. As she stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next, a final thought lingered in her mind, one that would stay with her forever. The truth was out there, but it wasn't always what you wanted it to be. Sometimes, the answers came at a cost. Sometimes, the truth was darker than you ever imagined. And sometimes, you had to choose whether or not you were willing to pay that price. As the camera zoomed out, the image of Kayla walking away faded into the distance, leaving behind an empty room, a final unanswered question, and a story that wasn't finished yet. For in the world of secrets and lies, there was always one more mystery waiting to be uncovered. The darkness, it seemed, would never fully fade.